Hello, everyone. We. This is great. Well, this will be good learning. We've never done that before. Well, I've never done that
Hmm.
before. All right, we're gonna just jump right back into it. We're talking about the moon landing, everyone. We thought we were recording the last 20 minutes. We weren't, which is great. So this might be a bit shorter. Um, let's just continue. Well, we were talking about propaganda, right? So we haven't been to the moon in 50 years. The moon landings, the Apollo landings began in uh, not the early 60s and they ended in the early
The first
70s.
one was in '69, right?
The first human landing, we didn't get humans on the moon until 68, and then
Gotcha.
we only had a 4 year period of humans on the moon. Um, Yeah, what do we want to continue to talk about? Man, that sucks. We had 20 minutes. It was doing really well too.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean,
all right.
what we were kind of discussing was just the different viewpoints of the moon landing and how propaganda might play a role into it.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that we touched on was how it would be interesting to go to different countries where they don't have the propaganda or the pride tied to the moon landing and see what they teach about it. Like, did we obviously it's not going to be as important to them,
Mm-hmm.
but just to see whether they think we went, whether they think any of the story is untrue,
Yeah.
um, things along those lines. Because when you're living in America, you got a whole generation of people who think that their individual boomer grit took us to the moon and they have a piece in the prize that is the moon landing, which
Yeah.
I mean, it's not really so. You didn't do anything to get there. NASA isn't an organization where you vote for the people that are in there. And in fact, NASA was mainly started and founded and populated in its early days by former Nazis who came over to the United States after World War II in Operation Paperclip. And actually, the head of NASA was an SS officer,
Yeah.
Werner
Werner von
von
Braun.
Braun.
Yeah. He was a part of the Nazi Party, and he. Let's pull that up.
So
The specific. Yeah. Yeah. Keep talking.
at the end of the day, the pride tied to the moon landing for Americans is misplaced to say the least, considering, I mean, the brains behind it or the guiding hand behind it was citizens of another country and one that we had just got done fighting a war against. So to
Yeah.
have this crazy level of pride, because the moon landing is something that if you do question it and you especially question it effectively, people
Mm-hmm.
will be quite angry with you because there's something in their minds. It's like a certain level of patriotism comes along with the moon landing being true. And
Yeah.
if anyone questions it, it's almost like there's a personal attack on the person because it's their country and one of their alleged greatest achievements ever. So it's very interesting to see the different aspects of it. But yeah, okay.
Let's go to the Don Pettit. I'm just gonna quick play that video. You won't be able to hear it, but uh, this is Don Pettit, who is um, he's an American astronaut and chemical engineer. He's the longest and oldest active astronaut who's getting the NASA pension. Uh, this is his reasoning for why we haven't gone back to the moon. You can find this clip
I'd go to the moon
on
in a
YouTube.
nanosecond. The problem is we don't have the technology to do that anymore. We used to, but we destroyed that technology, and it's a painful process to build it back again.
Okay, so
I'd
as
go
we
to
heard
the
there, he said we destroyed the technology. It's a painful process to build it back, which is an interesting, it's an interesting answer to why haven't we gone back, considering the advances that we've had in technology over the past 50 years. Seems like everything has advanced, right? From computer calculations to our knowledge of aerospace, and I don't know, everything has advanced in the past 50 years. And what he might be getting at, and what I think he's getting at, is the idea that everything that we had built up until 1972 is so old and almost not accessible because of the fact that everything is new now, and that technology, while we could get back to it and use it, we have the knowledge and the manpower. It would probably be far easier to just start from scratch and just build new rockets, use new technology, rather than trying to dig up all our old work and all those old blueprints and then building the rockets from there. I think that's kind of what he's getting at when he means we've lost, but it's just a bad way to say it, right? Like it just does not, it doesn't roll
He
off the
doesn't
tongue
inspire
well.
confidence in it.
Yes, it's almost like it downplays what NASA's doing, right? Like it makes it sound like NASA's dumb and they don't have the funding or the knowledge to go back
It's
and get
not
that.
even really the funding. When he says it, it would be painful
Yeah,
to
yeah,
refine or like reproduce the technology.
right.
It's
Yeah,
just like, what does that
yeah,
mean? Like a lot of time or the techno like name one other thing where the technology has over time gotten
right.
like less
Exactly.
profitable or less. I mean, it just doesn't work. Technology moves forward, it doesn't move backward, and he's implying that it's now more difficult than it
Hmm.
was then with people who are likely more knowledgeable about physics and everything that would be necessary to get us back to the moon
Hmm.
because of the past. So allegedly we've been there. The improvements in technology have resulted in something that you would expect, even if the technology hadn't advanced, the people are now more knowledgeable because it's been done in the past. But it's like there's just this kind of like in movies where, or Men in Black, where after an event, they just have the flashlight, they flick it on, and then no one remembers what happened. How can
Right.
we now not understand, even though the technology is more advanced in every single other field, and the people should have more knowledge and be better prepared to reproduce it or even improve on it? Why would you want to use the same exact technology and plan that you're using back then when you should have so much more of a capability to do it better now, even?
Yeah. Yeah. We kind of talked about this, but we definitely didn't stop that kind of technology, right? Like we continued to, no one's going to stop trying to advance what we have built upon. And I think we just started to use it in different ways where it's more concerned about defense technology and how can we keep the country safe while also producing these crazy new military weapons. And
Mm-hmm.
I think what happened was we went to the moon and we continued to learn and improve our technology just in the Apollo landings. And then when we decided we'd been to the moon enough and there was, it was just costing too much to get there, we had already really learned what we could at that time. The potential to do more was kind of gone at that point. I think those figures in the NASA program that were able to send us to the moon, like the smartest people, they once that those Apollo programs shut down, those people probably just moved over to our defense industry, and they're probably working for different government agencies, just continuing to improve that technology rather than working for NASA, which is prioritizing scientific information and exploration rather than weapons and defense military. And when we realized that we were able to go to the moon and we got there, and I mean, there's not much left we can really learn from going, that's when we were like, okay, time to focus on actually creating weapons and defense military, or like defense airspace aircrafts and stuff like that. We were talking about the B-21 earlier. I've said that like 15 times already, but we just have crazy technology that we're continuing to improve, and it's not under the name of NASA, but it's still aerospace technology. And so to go back to the question that we don't have it or it's a painful process, it definitely is a painful process, but that process is no longer for space exploration, and it's just, I don't know, defense military exploration into space. But then
Hmm.
we have like SpaceX, right? So Elon is attempting to go to Mars, and he wants to put people on Mars, right? So it's not like that idea of space exploration is gone. I just kind of feel like our government real like to continue putting billions of dollars in that for scientific, like there's it only gets us so far. And I think when we did that for 10 years, right? Like they're paying 400,000 people for 10 years, and who knows how many billions of dollars, how many missions, like there's just so much work being put into it, and they saw the potential for turning that into a defense program. And I think that's kind of where the focus and shift in NASA went. And that's my understanding of why we haven't gone back. There's just really not so much of a need, and we just decided to prioritize those people and that knowledge to defense agencies. So, yeah. Um, I was talking a lot there. Why?
Yeah.
I had a question for you earlier. Yeah, keep going.
So I was just gonna say, then it's essentially for NASA just a lot of money to tinker around and not really do anything. And I'm just confused why we wouldn't go back, because there's so much scientific exploration that can be done there,
Yeah.
and it's almost like a missed opportunity out of inconvenience rather than the impossibility of going back. If we've ever been there, we should be able to go back, and if we've been there more than once and
Mm-hmm.
up to, what is it, 9 times or 7 times, I mean,
Right.
we should be able to. And I think that if we could, it would be profitable for us to go back, not from a money perspective, but from a knowledge and an understanding of the moon, because the moon has a deep effect on us as humans and even the ecosystems around us, like the tides.
Mm-hmm.
So to understand it better would be important. And although it isn't necessarily a pressing issue for the survival of humanity, it would help us to progress. And in a nation of wealth, it would make sense to start prioritizing continued progression rather than stagnation or even moving backwards.
Yeah. And I NASA definitely has improved in some, right. We've improved in some areas since the landings,
Hmm.
and they've sent. We've got. I think we still have active rovers on Mars. I know we for sure did. One died. I'm pretty sure. Um,
Oh,
right. But we have continued space exploration, like missions and whatnot. But yeah, there it seems like NASA just got shut down after the Apollo missions, right? Like
hmm,
they haven't done anything since. SpaceX was like one upping NASA, right? For a while, Elon was almost making them. It was like, all right, hey guys, I'm sending rockets. Like, what are you up to? Like, I'm spending
hmm.
my own money doing this, and you guys are like, seriously, what's going on? So,
It's almost like the most notable events since the Apollo missions have been the failures, and there's almost no, like, could you name something that they've done since the Apollo missions specifically that you are just impressed with or really happy or proud that we did? But you could easily name the Challenger incident. You could name all of these other
yeah,
failures that they've had.
yeah,
So yeah, it's almost like, to me, it seems like they're tinkering around and taking a lot of government money, and who knows where most of it's going.
yeah.
But it's almost as though the failures are the new face of NASA.
Yeah, we were kind of talking about that earlier, right? Like, um, if this was all played out, it was a setup, right? We never went.
Hmm.
Everything was just filmed on Hollywood sets. Why then would we allow events like the Challenger to happen? Why are we now sending people up and then they're dying, but then everything before then was a setup? Were we, like at that point, did we catch ourselves too much and we're like, hey, we've told everyone we've gone, but we haven't actually sent anyone, and then we put people up there and then it explodes and we're like, hey, we can't actually do it. Is that what happened? Or I don't know. What do you think? Why do you think? Because you don't believe we went, and yeah, why? What questions do you have about the Challenger then?
So I think that the fact that I don't believe we went and you lean towards we did, but you're not 100% sure. I think that's
Yeah.
why we have another differing opinion on the Challenger or the purpose of it. Because did you happen to watch the video that I sent you about the alleged
Ooh.
people who survived the Challenger?
No, I remember hearing about it like a long time. I didn't get to watch
Yeah.
it though. Yeah.
Okay. So there's the evidence in the video itself implies that these people are now still living and have jobs and are just regular people again. One of them's a professor, and they have pictures of them when they're young and then pictures of them now. And some of them have either the same name or they now use their former middle name as their first name. And there's 2 that have twins who are identical.
Interesting.
So it's
strange
that
coincidences.
does bring me to a point where I don't really care, to be honest with you. This is before my time.
Yeah.
But one thing that I would see as a purpose for the Challenger, if you're looking at it from a negative perspective, is you have this innocent teacher who's on board, and then you have teachers and students throughout the entire United States who they have this TV wheeled into the room and they're expecting their country to do something amazing. And then in front of the entire nation, especially the most susceptible to any sort of trauma,
children,
it blows up, and then they're connecting to the fact that there was a teacher on board and all of these things. So from a negative perspective, I'd say if that was planned and they're still alive, that would, I mean, at the end of the day, it did result in trauma on the kids, and it's just a matter of whether that was something done to kind of have a little fracture in the minds of the kids. But from another perspective, I think that would legitimize the case for increased funding in NASA so that they could be more careful and more successful in the future. And I think that's where we disagree, is you think that would automatically force them to pull funding. And since it's happened so long in the past, their funding is still very extensive. $22.6 billion, $62 million a day. I mean, what are they, Ukraine with all the money they're getting?
Yeah, that is a great point. Like, what's happening with these billions of dollars? Why, what are they doing? They haven't really done much since. But yeah, I mean, I guess if you do believe that the Challenger would then increase, I could see how it could increase funding after it, it blows up. We look at that and we're like, okay, we have potential to do great things here, but we need to take more precautions, and that's going to cost more money, right? Yeah, I could see that. We've talked about things, MK Ultra was not, our government killed 2 people on record, so it's not like our government is going to be shy necessarily of death. We haven't shied away from topics that have talked about that. So if you ever think, our government wouldn't, it's not going to do that to its own people. We killed how many college students at the Kent campus in Ohio? When even was that? Like, that was, I think, in the 70s too. Like, there's no shortage of events showing our government doing atrocious things at its own people. So go on.
So basically, it's as though Americans all understand that the government has not been over the table with everything that's been done in the past. And in some ways, we don't even know how bad they
Right.
were, or the lives that they took, or the lives that they negatively affected. But now
Exactly.
we kind of like project on this, oh, well, I'm now living in this time, so they're
Hmm.
more trustworthy now.
Yeah.
That's
And
almost
it,
never been the case with an empire, that they get
right.
more trustworthy as it
Yeah. And again, that just
progresses.
plays into the whole propaganda doesn't exist in the States, right? Like we pride ourselves in being honest and truthful, and then when evidence of that not of us not being honest and truthful comes out, like no one cares. Every time
Hmm.
there's evidence of people just bat an eye and say, oh, tisk tisk, or
Tisk
no one,
tisk.
it's just people don't care. You tell people about MK Ultra and it's just, again, you talk about it for an hour and then you just go on with your day. So I don't know. That's one thing that debunkers try to say is, how can our government do these own things to its own people or create these secret systems, and we have proof of them happening, and to just say they're not happening here but they are in other places is, you're just being ignorant. Like,
Hmm.
yeah. um
It's as though the atrocities that are committed, the American public doesn't have the willingness or courage to believe them until there's no one that can be held accountable because too much time has passed. But they'll
yeah.
know about them.
Yeah. Did I miss you? Hello?
Yeah.
You there? Oh, you cut
Hmm.
out for a second. Yeah. Yeah, I guess I kind of want to talk about more some points that debunkers and both conspiracy theorists try to point to. And one of the ideas is, there's 400,000 people that are being employed, and how are they all going to hold the secret that um, this didn't actually happen, right? It seems impossible. There's no way 400,000 people are all in on this and they're just able to keep a tight lip. And you would think, right? Like, all right, that seems like good evidence. That's, how could that happen? Um, and I don't know if you want to talk about the idea of compartmentalization. I can give some examples on the when we developed the atomic bomb. I'll have to find um, what it's exactly called. If you want to talk about this.
Yeah. So my point to that would be, it's not going to be easy.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, when you have 400,000 people, it becomes almost easier the more people that there are, because at the end of the day, there's going to be a few people who genuinely know whether they went. So it's
Yeah,
going to be the people who are on board,
and Stanley
and
Kubrick,
the
he
people
knows,
who are
right?
and the people who are calling the shots at the highest level. Everyone
Exactly.
else can be compartmentalized into their own specific position of expertise. And the thing
Mm-hmm.
with extremely smart people is, a lot of the time their expertise is only in one area, and that expertise that they have at such a high level is almost compensated for at such a low level in other topics or points of knowledge,
Mm-hmm.
that it would be fairly reasonable to say that they could have been compartmentalized into thinking they were each doing their specific task, but in the grand scheme of things, they may not have understood how it was resulting. And
Yeah.
then for the actual moon trip and landing itself, they could have been essentially working on a simulation that to them could have also seemed reasonably believable. And when you have such pride and time dedication and energy dedication to a project, you're not looking for reasons why it shouldn't be happening or isn't happening. You're
Mm-hmm.
looking for the reason and the solution to the problem, whether perceived or real, how you can fix it.
Yeah. Yeah. If we go, so the atomic bomb project, the Manhattan Project, as it was called, um, is a good example of compartmentalization. And it was necessary, right? So we had to develop the atomic bomb, And the only way to do that without letting Germany and like Japan know that we were developing it and we were successful was to keep it a secret from the people that were even working on it. So they would have specific groups intended to work on different aspects of the bomb, and they wouldn't know what that specific part would do in the greater picture of the bomb. They would just be working on specific aspects, and they wouldn't know what it would do in the grand scheme of things. They just knew what project they were working on, and that's kind of all they were being told. And you do get to a point, right, where, okay, well, somebody needs to know the whole picture, right? Somebody needs to know how to put the bomb together, all that assembly. And those are the people that need to stay tight-lipped, right? But it's
Mm-hmm.
it's a less number than 400,000 people. And
Yep.
if we do go to that, all right, they're compartmentalized, and it's believable, right? And the Manhattan Project was going on before even the moon landing started. So there's proof right there that we had compartmentalized government ran projects 15, 20 years before even the moon landings. So what's to
Mm-hmm.
say that didn't happen? And I guess there's not great proof to come back at that, right? You just kind of have to be like, all right, out of 400,000 people, there's probably, I don't know, around 1,000, maybe less than 1,000, that if, let's say, this event was faked and compartmentalized, there's probably 1,000 people that know the truth, right? And that's still a lot of people. So,
I'd say probably less than 50.
see, that's where I, d- I don't know. We've had nine. We went there 9 different times, right? How are 50 people faking this 9 different times over the span of 4 years? And I just don't see it. Like there's got to be there'd have to be way more people involved. There's no way you could fake send up 26 different. There's 26 different astronauts right there. So that's
Well,
half
no,
of 50 that supposedly went. So
mhm.
they would know if we went. I don't know. It's
But
got to be. I could see like maybe 500. I don't know though. It's definitely a lot of people that would have to know.
when they come back from the missions, though, they have an incentive to act like it happened. They if it didn't happen, they're almost nothing. They're just a regular person, and they're
Right.
out of the limelight. And one thing that I found interesting, and I'll give the argument for why I think it would be possible that they could have gone to the moon and then come back and had these reactions, but
Mm-hmm.
that when they came back, almost every astronaut, but especially Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin, developed crippling depression, crippling alcoholism, and they also got divorced.
Yeah.
And one reason why, if I was criticizing the moon landing as ever happening, I would say is there was something that they either talked about or weren't allowed to talk about that was crippling them in a way that they didn't even understand how to deal with it. And Neil
Yeah.
Armstrong only had a few public appearances after the moon landing, and you would expect the guy who first set foot on the moon to have a closer proximity to the limelight than a guy named Buzz Aldrin, who has an alcohol problem, which is ironic, and his mother's maiden last name was Moon. There's just a few things about it that are really interesting, not even points for or against the moon landing. It's just very coincidental. And another thing, just getting off topic real quick here, is the Werner von Braun, who was in charge of NASA, he wrote a book and he wrote about going to Mars. Guess who the name of the character who went to Mars was?
Mm, Neil.
Elon.
Elon. Interesting.
In 1953, I believe the book was published, which is just another
Interesting.
interesting little thing.
Yeah.
But the guy in charge of NASA who lived through all of the moon landings and then died 5 years later, on his gravestone, he has his name. And this is a very popular, likely very wealthy and powerful man. The only things on his regular gravestone are his name, the dates that he was born and died, and then Psalm 19:1, which is a Bible verse, and it says, "The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth his handiwork." And for those who might not know what the firmament is alleged to be, it's almost as though the earth has a glass dome around it, I would say, and a couple of other points in the Bible where it implies that there is something separating. Is in Genesis, it says he separated the waters below and the waters above. And some people might say that that's just clouds. Others would say that it's the firmament. And the interesting point about it is, if there is a firmament, then how are you getting through it to go to the moon? Or is the moon on the inside of the firmament? There's a lot of questions that need to be answered, and it's as though he's intentionally confusing you, because that's not the kind of Bible verse you would put on your
Right.
gravestone if you were trying to be forthright. It's something almost as if he knew there were going to be people that would see it and be like, wait a second, what were you in charge of again?
Yeah. No, that I don't like that fact that his gravestone, yeah, it's just very slight. Uh,
Uh-huh.
just to reiterate, Werner von Braun, if you just Google his gravestone, it doesn't have anything on it other than his name, his day of birth and death. Not even the day, just the year. And then Psalm 19, verse 1. And I'm not sure if we talked about him before we started recording or not, but um, von Braun was he is regarded as like the father of space travel, the father of rocket science, and the father of the American lunar program. He started his work as a Nazi in Germany, a part of the Allgemeine SS. I don't know how to say that. I probably said that wrong. But he worked in Nazi Germany's rocket development program, and then during Operation Paperclip, which I think we talked about Operation Paperclip in the MK Ultra episode. Um, but he was a German Nazi scientist who came over in this Operation Paperclip along with 1,600 other scientists that we hired, and we just stuck them right into our programs and said, all right, it's all right that you were a Nazi, but you were very smart and you have to continue the work you're doing. So, I don't know, that's just another interesting thing to see. He was involved with Walt Disney too. I think we can talk a little bit more about that. Um,
And Stanley Kubrick.
right, yeah, well, I guess that's the huge like conspiracy, right? Is Stanley Kubrick, who is this like one of the best known film producers. He was the one who was tasked with setting up these Apollo landings, which I just don't. I guess we can dive into that. Like, do you want to talk about the pictures of the inconsistencies in pictures? Because I don't know. You could say one thing, and we talk about parallel shadows and how there's pictures taken that show two different light sources, but there's no sun on the moon. So, but then I've seen images just in everyday, like a stop sign shadow and like a person shadow, and they both are not parallel with each other. But I don't know. We can talk about that more if you want. It just seems kind of,
I kind of try and stay away from
yeah. It's
the photos and everything like that, and I kind of I try to just explain why it is most likely that we didn't go, because
yeah,
I mean, basically you're arguing at a certain point whether they faked the footage well enough or whether it was real. A few points that I just make on that note is, did you get the video that I sent you about how thin the outer layer was of the lunar lander?
yeah. I did see that, and I don't know that. I mean, I can understand. That's something where I just can't answer with full. Like, I don't understand physics well enough to know that if that kind of thin and flimsy object is able to withstand the pressure that our atmosphere, I don't
Hmm.
understand that. But like heat temperature, if we talk about like temperature wise, like I I think I showed you just an article on like fire suits. Like we definitely had the metals and material to withstand heat, but like we can talk about the radiation of the Van Allen belt or the
Hmm.
Van what is it called, the Van Halen belt? I don't even know how
The
to
Van
say it.
Allen belt.
Yeah. So I mean that I guess comes down to you just got to know your science, and I
Yeah,
don't, and that's where I'd have to just put trust in the people that do. But
yeah. So the point that I would make is in the Apollo missions, the landers were fairly similar for the most part. And one comment that the guy made in the video, who was an astronaut, was that you wouldn't want to get too close to the outside of it because you might poke through it as though it's, he described it as tinfoil, is the way that he described it.
yeah,
So my point is, in 1969 and Apollo 11, it's possible that on the way to the moon, it the lander was able to um, miss all of the space junk that was flying around, right?
hmm,
Because it could have been programmed to do that. But in
hmm,
Apollo 13, when they lost all this technology and electricity and oxygen for how long did they say that it was again?
5 days. So let's, yeah,
For 5 days. So then at that point, you are now unable to dodge any of the space junk, rocks, just anything up there. And that's
yeah,
going to pierce. You think that's not going to pierce through some tinfoil going at
Y-
such a high speed? Yeah.
yeah. I mean, it certainly would, right?
Uh-huh.
And I mean, again, that's something I just can't answer, right? Like, how much shit is flying through the air in space? Like, I'm pretty sure space is big enough to where they could probably avoid some stuff for 5 days. Um, but that, I mean, just that story,
That's
right? Like,
ambitious.
I mean, right, it is, but so is believing in the whole, like, in order to, it was ambitious to go, right? I don't know, the whole thing
Yeah.
was, but that's I don't know, just thinking about it, they were just circling Earth, right, for 5 days. Let's look at this. Apollo 13. They were losing power and their computers weren't working, and somehow they landed safe. Like, insane. And it was in 1970. Like,
They didn't actually get to the moon that time.
no,
They
that,
had to
right.
come back
Yeah, they
and
had,
somehow, oh, we made it through. Because you have to go through, you have to return to Earth at such a perfect and precise angle that
yeah,
any malfunction while you're up there would require far too much mental calculation to be possible.
yeah.
And you
And
think you get
just,
a little cold, wouldn't you, without
that
electricity?
too. It was cold, and I think it was damp in there too. Like, it started getting wet, apparently.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm just reading through this Wikipedia page of Apollo 13, but no,
Well,
I
I'm just
mean,
glad they made it home safe.
I mean, I am too. I mean, and again, it's just another. That would be another thing where an event. It's a failed mission, right? But they got back safe, and I could see how that could increase funding. And they say, "Hey, we can, do this. Let's just pump more money into it, see what happens." Um,
Uh-huh.
yeah, that one is interesting. I think a lot of the movies are written about Apollo 13 too, like getting
Yep,
lost
there
in
is a movie
space and
about it.
all
I
that.
believe that I've seen it.
I think it's literally called
Um,
Apollo 13. Yeah.
yeah. Another point that I was going to make is how is it that you can go to up north Wisconsin, or I'm sure some places in California as well,
Yep.
and you're not getting a single bar or capability of calling with cell service, and yet from the moon, a place we've never been before,
Yeah.
we were able
S-
to call the president
Yeah.
in the White House, and he, of course, was
So
very proud of our boys.
yeah. So this is another one where I'm kind of like, you read some stuff and you kind of gotta trust, but also there seems to be some decent evidence on it. Um, I think I sent you that Google Doc. But one of the things is that is for sure they needed this crazy antenna to get the signal. And what they did was there were only two. There was one in Australia and some in California that were able to get the radio transmission, and they did television transmission too, like very brief, but it wasn't like the whole. We can talk about those animations and stuff like that too, but um, I'm just looking at this article. So they had these high-powered antennas on both, though they needed it on the moon and on Earth when we got there. So when they got to the moon, I think that's when we were able to do television broadcast, where we literally just had antennas built specifically for this or set up for this. They didn't call them through like you would on a phone. They like Nixon would have called into the space station in Houston, and then they would have sent him through whatever feed or whatever like transmission they were receiving. But it wasn't like we were directly calling them. It definitely was involved a lot more technology than that. I'm trying to find.
Mhm.
That's not.
Well, it's nice that the president was Richard Nixon, so that you can believe, based on his track record of trustworthiness and integrity, that
Doesn't help. That's for sure.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, right. I mean, it's tough when there's so many upsides to being the first one to the moon, right? Or even just to like fake, if this was all faked, right? There's so many reasons to do it. It would have made our country look incredibly powerful compared to every other country. Our
Mhm.
nation would have, it really did like connect our nation together, right? People were all enthralled in the challenges. Like everyone wanted to watch it. I'm pretty sure like 62% of America was watching the Apollo 11 landings. Like people were tuned in on this, and it was a huge deal. And you get to that point where it's like, all right, what if it goes wrong? Like what if we can't get to the moon? And then you continue the space race, and it has to end, and America's got to be on top, right? Like we've got to win. So I understand reasons why they would fake it, but I just can't get. I really do think we had the ability to get there, and how incredible that was back in the day. It really was. But I think that's another reason why it just was such a huge deal. Like
Mhm.
I don't know.
Yeah,
To
and I think this is one of the reasons why the moon landing is one of the conspiracy theories that's gained more traction than others,
Mhm.
because there are very practical reasons why they would have faked it to
Yeah.
essentially win the perception in the Cold War, to
Yeah.
bring a nation together while they're fighting in Vietnam, and it's probably more divided than it has been in a significant amount of time. Because you think about World War II, after Pearl Harbor, the majority of the population was like happy about the war. But then
Right.
for Vietnam, you have just dejection. How are we losing in a country that we're not essentially sure why we're there? Just all of these things. And there are reasons why they would have faked it. So I think that's why the conspiracy has more traction than others do, because the practical things that you can understand about why they would have,
Mhm.
anyone can understand. It doesn't take someone having a very specific set of skills or expertise to understand a certain scenario. Like understanding the JFK assassination, there's a few practical reasons that you could understand with a little bit of research, but you wouldn't understand them unless you did do the research. With this, if you hear about the moon landing, someone tells you they faked it, and you're asked why would they do that, you could do that just in your own mind. You wouldn't need anyone else's
Right. Yeah.
words or research that they had done in the past to prove it to yourself. You just think of the reasons. You might still believe in them, and then you might not, but the reasons
Yeah.
are there.
Hmm. Yeah, that is true. This is one of those things. If we kind of relate this to MK Ultra, like there was a reason for why they wanted to run those programs,
Mhm.
and they wanted to learn something, right? And there's a reason for everything they do. So yeah. Do you want to just, I don't know, if you have anything that you think is like undeniable, this is proof we didn't go. Do you think you have
Um,
that? I mean,
I don't think that I have anything that's undeniable. I think there's always going to be
yeah, yeah,
uh, an
yeah.
argument that can be framed in such a way to make by someone who's smarter or knows a little bit more about the topic. Doesn't mean
Mm-hmm,
they're right, but they can frame it or explain it in a way that someone who doesn't have a very high level of expertise in the specific subject.
mm-hmm.
Um, so if I was going to give a reason, anything of why or proof that we didn't go, let me think about that, and I'll try and hit you with something towards the end.
Sounds good. We can always, part two episode on this too. I mean, we
Yeah.
lost 20 minutes, so um, I guess for me, like if I were to give proof, my biggest proof is those photos that they're released by NASA, so it's kind of circular knowledge here. Um, but the proof that let me just find it. What were they called? So we have those photographs of the Apollo landings. Let me try to find what the telescope is actually called. But we also have like third party. I don't think we talked about that. Some third party evidence that we can call of some images. Um, Japan did a 3D model where they sent a rover up there and it just reconstructed the terrain, and that terrain looks extremely identical to some photos from the Apollo 15 um, landings. I'll post this all in the description of the video. These are just some Wikipedia articles, and that's kind of a recent thing is our ability to take pictures of the surface of the moon with these telescopes, but not actually be there. So I guess I don't know what I don't really know what the biggest like these images came within the last 15 years, at least higher resolution images, so there's better evidence. Um, but before 2000, right, there's no third party evidence that there's no other countries or nations that have said that we had gone to the moon. Now we have, I think, China, Germany, Luxembourg, and Japan are four that have claimed that we have been to the moon. And then, NASA's got their own telescopes.
Hmm.
I think that's like the most solid evidence. And people can look at the images that telescopes have said or that they've given us, and you look at these pictures and they're grainy images. They're not great, right? But they show what looks to be like some landing spots of some of the Apollo missions, and then also just tracks where the astronauts were walking on the moon. You can kind of see where they went on the images too. And I don't know. You could say if you don't believe we went to the moon, I guess you could just be like NASA is fudging those images. Like we talked about, most of NASA's images might be CGI. I don't think that's true about like looking. That might have been true back in the day, but I couldn't really find anything on that either. The possibility that these telescopes are just CGI. I saw something that they're like composite imagery, and they'll um, take multiple pictures of like seismographic imagery and then like temperature and all that stuff, and they just kind of like press it down onto one image, and that's what we get. So it's like kind of animated, but it's just putting a bunch of pictures on top of each other. I don't know. That's where it's you get to the point where you're like, all right, I got to be an expert in this, and I can't, I gotta spend hours, analyzing images, and that's just not happening. And even when the people do that, like you listen to interviews, and people just have different opinions, and people will claim they're experts. The one of the documentaries I was listening to, there was a guy. It was funny. They're all British. All the conspiracy theorists are British for some reason. But then they're all like, they all claim they're professionals in their field. But then you go on the opposite side. It's the same thing. They claim they're professionals in their field, and what they say is correct. So you get down to it, and you're like, who is the voice of reason? And when there's conflicting opinions on people who claim they're the voice, it's confusing for everyday people like us. And at that point, it's the job of NASA and it's the job of our government to make things clear. And I think they're definitely trying to, right? Like why else are we taking pictures of the Apollo landings with these telescopes? Like they certainly want to prove that we went. And I think they may have in the past, they did press conferences after they went to the moon, but it's not like they were actively, trying to prove to us that they went. And one way that they would do that is just continue to go. Like, prove to us that you're going by furthering your exploration and all this stuff. And then you get dumb stories where we give some dude in Denmark a piece of petrified wood.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, it's like, all right, so, I mean, exactly. It's just like weird things like that. Like, why are we doing this? Why
aren't you faking it well enough if you are faking it? Like, do you want
Yeah.
people to really not know? Because I am not 100% willing to say we didn't go,
Yeah,
but I'm almost there.
right.
But I'm still not there. It's like,
Right, yeah,
you could really do a better job of faking it. You don't
totally.
need to give someone petrified wood and claim that it's a moon rock.
Right.
It's just confusing. And you brought up a point, and now I have my.
Okay,
This
cool.
is why I think we didn't go, and
Yeah.
it's almost. So first of all, I just say there's a lot of things that are very coincidental, like the moon rock, like being able to fly through space and miss debris and have the lunar lander have essentially what they describe as a thing of tinfoil, and then we can't go back because the technology would be too painful to retrieve. Those coincidences, but I think the kicker for me is when they got back and had their press conference,
Yeah.
the astronauts who actually stepped foot on the moon had conflicting stories about whether they could see stars. And I know that you have a few reasons why they may not have been able to see stars, even though they were on the moon. Everything around them should have been dark except for the light, which,
Right.
I mean, evidently would be easier to see there than even on Earth. But if they really did not have the ability to see the stars, which you would assume they would,
Right.
why is someone lying?
Yeah.
Do they not? It's like they don't have their story straight well enough.
Yeah. You'd think there'd be consensus. Yeah, that was. Yeah, and that's. I don't know. That's one thing I guess I could do better research on too. Is I'd like to pull all those videos of conflicting statements, and I've seen it before. Like it just that last press conference, they talk about it, and Michael Collins, I think his name was. They're talking about whether they could see stars or not, and they're like trying to remember. Michael Collins goes, "I don't think I actually remember seeing any stars."
The most important moments of your life, and you're like, yeah, I don't really remember.
Yeah, so it's like it's interesting, and so the guy who actually asked that question, one of the documentaries that I was watching, they pulled that guy and they asked him like, "Why'd you ask that question?" And he was like, "I already knew the answer to it," and he said that the iris in your eye, it's similar to just walking in like a dark room, or like your eyes need to adjust, and they just don't have time to see the stars or whatever. And I like what I think they were getting at was they could see the stars eventually. They just needed to adjust to it, but
Hmm.
it wasn't possible without a light source. So I don't know. There's things like that, and we also can talk about like the images. There's no stars in any of the images that they took, but that's also something where like you have no light source. So the light source they did have was illuminating the things in front of them. So everything in the background was just going to be dim or dark. So, but again, it's something like, all right, now I need to be a professional in camera work, and I need to study
Uh-huh.
cameras and it's like, all right, now I'm a crazy man because I've spent 10 hours trying to figure out what cameras do. Like
And it
it's
makes you wonder that they pulled the guy into a room to ask him why he asked about the stars.
yeah,
It's not like that's such a inspirational and intelligent question that, oh, how
yeah,
did you do it, sir? It's almost like,
yeah.
wait, why are you asking this? We don't want you to ask
It
this.
was interesting. Yeah, he was like, I already knew the answer to it, and it was almost like he just wanted to see what they had to say, almost like he
Uh-huh.
was being suspicious of whether the fact those guys had been to the moon. That press conference that we were talking about, it's just I don't like that
It's
press conference at
creepy.
all. It really is creepy. Like you're just watching it, and one of the things that I hate the most is somebody asked like, "What did you think when you saw the Earth as you were orbiting the moon?" Or like, "Where did you think? No, as you stepped on the moon, like." Did you think the question literally goes something like, "Did you think you were on Earth, or where did you think you were?" And Buzz Aldrin's like just jokingly, I don't know, just his tone and like the rhetoric of it all is like he just goes, "Oh, there was no doubt where we were. We had been orbiting the Earth for 3.5 hours at that point," and it was like everyone in the room laughs, and it's just it's just all very it didn't seem right. I didn't
Uh-huh.
like watching it. It didn't help reinforce any ideas that we went to the moon. It just made things, I don't know, it was confusing, right? And then
Yeah.
you talk about Neil Armstrong doesn't have many public appearances afterwards, but then Buzz Aldrin's running his mouth like there's no tomorrow
Oh,
and
he wants.
everything,
I think
right?
he punched someone in the
He
face
did. I
for
did watch that vid.
questioning the moon
That
landing.
was
That's
great.
funny.
There was a conspiracy theorist that walks up to him in a conference, and he's like, "You didn't go to the moon. You're lying to you're lying to our faces." Blah blah blah. And Buzz Aldrin, no words, just socks him in the face, and it's like,
Yeah.
all right, dude. If you, I, I hated that, right? Because okay, I'm in Buzz Aldrin's shoes, and I guess every person's different. People are gonna react differently to everything. I could be totally pissed, right? Like I worked my ass off to get to the moon, and I got there, and people are just, you're a liar, and blah, blah, blah. And they're like, what can I do to make you believe? You know? Part of
Mhm.
me, I feel like I just laugh, though. Like, I don't think I'd become violent and be like, oh, why are you, I'd be like, dude, you're an idiot. Look at all this evidence I'm trying
Yeah.
to give you. Like, it just doesn't, another thing, it just doesn't help the situation. Like, why are we now just like being violent towards people who tell us we're being liars? It doesn't help the
Uh-huh.
situation. Yeah.
What are you so defensive of?
Yes, exactly. Why are you so defensive? Like, if you truly, like, you went, he must believe he went to the moon, right? Like, I don't know. Why are you? I just laughed
He's
it
MK
off.
Ultra'd out.
Yeah, no, literally. I guess we could speculate about that. Like, but seriously, if I had stepped foot on the moon and some dude that I don't even know is like in my face, like in the grand scheme of things, I'd be like, dude, I was on the moon and you weren't. Shut up, get out of here. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
no,
You
like,
know, I just thought of something that I think it's interesting at least.
yeah,
So when they came back, they all like developed depression and alcoholism and
mhm,
mental illness, as the articles that I read describe. If they were ever to come clean and say they didn't go, they have that narrative already in place. Oh, he's depressed. Oh, he's mentally ill. He's just not well. He's an alcoholic. All
yeah,
these things.
yeah,
They their plausible deniability is already there, and they set it up right after,
right,
or it
yeah.
just
I
fell into
just
place.
right. They're not gonna again if this is all set up. They're not just gonna willy nilly do it. They're gonna take as much precautions to keep it covered. They're gonna try to cover their own asses. Like we can compare this to MK Ultra again. when you destroy 20,000 documents, you're trying to cover your own ass for things. Like, we're not going to, we're not going to do things without having a backup plan and make sure that all our checks are in place. So
Mhm.
it would make sense, that if this was compartmentalized and everyone's got to be tight-lipped, they'd have to make sure that if one of them slips up or just breaks loose, that they've got an excuse to say, he's just going crazy now. And I mean, I haven't watched a lot of Buzz Aldrin interviews, but I don't know, he's a strange individual, that's for sure.
Yeah,
But
he was talking to a kid at some school, and the kid, uh, what did they say? I think the kid asked why we hadn't been back to the moon. And he says, because we never went. There's a video of him saying that. He
Buzz
kind of chuckles.
Aldrin,
So, yeah, he kind of chuckles. So, but it's just like weird. He's
yeah,
not a very straightforward person
yeah,
whatsoever. A
yeah,
little
but
kid's asking you why you never
yeah,
went back,
dude,
and you're gonna mess with them.
yeah, like, you should be informative, like, if,
Hmm.
at that point, no one, that is so weird. No one would joke about that, like, I don't know. Again, so many just weird coincidences. It's like, why can't we just have a clear, direct story that makes sense from all perspectives and can be
Hmm.
undeniably proven? We were talking about this earlier too. Like, all right, again, like we could call Elon out or whatever, but he totally has the ability to just send a little rover up there and put a camera on it and just look at the Apollo landings. Be like, okay, yeah, we can clearly see footsteps here. We can clearly see all this stuff. There's the flag there. It's not waving. It shouldn't be difficult. And I don't know. It comes down to just who's gonna send the money, right? Like, we totally could do it. The government could do it if they really wanted to. Right now, they could have the spending that they totally could do it. We did it in the past. We can do it again. But we don't. I don't know if we don't want to or if it's just a money issue. That's one like topic we talk about a lot. Is everyone is just striving for money, and no one wants to like lose money. And
Hmm.
it feels like at this point there's a lot of loss in space exploration, right? Like, if Elon could get to them, if we would be on Mars right now if it was financially, if we were able to, and it was profitable in some way, but it's not. So having undeniable proof for this requires a lot of money, it requires the right people, and it requires like an actual need and like desire to want to prove it. And no one at NASA wants to prove we went to the moon because in their
Hmm.
eyes we already did. So it's like, why?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, I don't know, we will never get like 100%. Here's the proof we went. And if we
Hmm.
do, it's not going to be for, I don't know. I remember watching another video, like if we switched NASA's budget with the military or something like that. I have to, I'll have to watch it again. But it was
Yeah.
like what we could do and all this, and it really makes you question like what could we do, and I don't know. We talk about the secret government stuff and whatnot. And it's like, all right, if we could do it, why aren't we? And we probably are. We're just not telling anyone. And that's what I think Area 51 is. Like, we could do that for another episode. It might be pretty boring and short, but I doubt we're like searching for aliens. I really think
No.
we're just developing crazy weapons and technology and airplanes at Area
Hmm.
51.
Zero gravity machines.
Yeah, we get the Tic Tac video from like 2 years ago, right? You get this wobbly little thing, and it's like, it's got like it's just our own technology, and we're like showing it off at that point, and then everyone's gonna look at it and be like, all right, well they can do these crazy things, you know, we're just not telling anyone about it. So
Yeah. Well, I'm just super happy that they got to play golf up there.
Dude, I had found that. I gotta find that video again. That one was kind of funny. He took like 4 or 5 hacks at it, and I
Uh-huh.
mean, like, so, okay, you know, who?
Most expensive golf game ever.
Yes. Why are we? Okay, we're going to the moon, right? I'd like to figure out which moon landing that was. Like, if it had to have been the later ones, right?
I think it was the first one. I'm not sure though.
If it was, that would be insane. Like, we're not even, doing scientific evidence. We're playing golf on the moon. Like, all right, this is a show then. But no, I remember watching that video. I was like,
Alan Shepard. Oh, Apollo 14.
okay, so after Apollo 13, so it was one of the later ones or middle ones, probably like the third or fourth time we went. But
Yeah.
why are we wasting weight on golf balls and like what are we doing? It just,
Why are we littering in space?
that too. The golf balls are probably still there. Like, I that was a weird thing because it was like this is all for show. Like, there's who came up with that idea, and then like it had to have passed a few levels of like higher ups, and people are like, sure, we'll play golf on the moon. That'll be a good look for America, and it probably was, honestly. They're probably like, they'll see we're playing sports up here. It's just us bragging at that point, probably, right? We're like
Dude, this is like the stupidest video I've ever seen in my life.
him swinging the
You
golf.
almost, you almost should put it in the podcast. It's just like, I can't believe that people believe this.
Do you want to send it to me, and then I'll screen share it?
I'm gonna send it to my messages. Just like skip to the middle. It's so dumb.
I mean, it looks kind of realistic from what I saw. I think it's kind of funny. Alan Shepard is a golf ball on the moon. All right, I'm gonna screen share real quick. So
Yes, and while you're looking that up, you might
It's about
recognize what I have in my hand is the
sorry, say that again.
$4 billion per swing.
What if? All right. But yeah, like, why are we playing golf on the moon? What are we
The
doing?
comments are turned off.
Who posted the video too? I'd like to know.
NASA.
Oh, my whole screen's freaking out now. We'll just post some videos in the YouTube comments, and we'll
Yeah.
go from there. I've got to edit this one down too, but
Uh-huh.
yeah, I don't know, dude. Again, I think I've got more questions than I did before. Like, we just need clarification, and we need that for 9/11. We need that for, I don't know, JFK. We need that for a lot of stuff. We need that for Area 51.
At least this one doesn't involve anyone being tortured or dying. That's what I'll say.
Right, that's true. That is very true. This is a lot more morally, like, if we lied about it, it didn't kill anyone, I don't think, except
Yeah.
Challenger people. But maybe they're not dead. So
Hopefully they're not dead. That's the thing. Wouldn't you
Yeah.
rather have them be alive? I would.
exactly. Oh my god. Damn, I come. It's too bad we missed the first 20 minutes. We went an hour and a half for this one. It was pretty good.
Uh-huh.
We'll definitely. I mean, we could talk more about this too, but I don't know.
Yeah. I
this
think
is
we
pretty
should
good.
talk about the Federal Reserve soon.
Yeah, I agree. I have a professor he said that when he was in college, a lot of the things he looked at was the Federal Reserve because, okay, we talk about money, right? And the Federal Reserve is a huge factor in what money even is in America, and it's not
Yep.
an elected position. It's, I'm pretty sure the president chooses it, but it's like a mysterious thing, like, why are they the ones to choose? They choose interest rates, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Their
I don't
job
know.
essentially is to make sure that the stock market stays up high enough. But I've heard that when you hear a politician starting to bring something into the world and through like a speech or anything like that, go ahead and look at the Federal Reserve's minutes from the past like 2-3 weeks, and then you'll see where it's coming from and what the purpose of it will be. That's what I've heard. I've never looked at the minutes
Interesting.
because I don't have the time to just sit down and listen to a bunch of like egocentric maniacs who talk really monotone. I can't listen to that.
Right.
I don't want to read that.
Mhm.
I do know quite a bit about the Federal Reserve already, but even learning more it's probably going to be one of the more interesting and underrated episodes that we have.
Yeah, I feel like that one would be rewarding from an informative perspective too. Like, just to
Mhm.
find, like, to understand how all that, like, it's so confusing, and the fact
Oh,
that we,
it's pretty simple once you get down to it. You can pretty much explain through every single war why the bank wanted us to be in it.
interesting. We'll have to look into it because that would be a very good episode, and
Uh-huh.
that's not. I guess that is kind of a conspiracy, right? Like,
Kinda.
we're talking about motives
It's
and
like it's more just
purposes.
like
And,
yeah, once you get to the motives and everything like that. But the fact that they have the power over even the politicians is almost undeniable once you understand
yeah,
what's going on. And it's like everyone is willing to say money runs the world, but if they were to question this, it would just be like, so does it really, or is it the person who's voted on and makes $100,000 a year?
yeah, right. I don't know. We'll have to. I gotta do research on that though, because I don't know much. Like the
Uh-huh.
facts about it, I don't know.
I'll send you a video about it after we're done.
Cool. All right.
But
Um, well, I guess unless you've got some final statements about the moon landing, I'm kind of all burnt out.
I'm jealous that I didn't get to play golf there.
Dude, I'd like even just to go to the moon. Like, who's the dude? Like Spirit Airlines or whatever. He's sending people to like the atmosphere, but it's like $1 million ticket or something like that. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, is it Richard Branson?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. But
I don't think it's Spirit Airlines, but it's something like it's
not
Virgin
Spirit.
Galactic.
Virgin Galactic. That's what it is. Yeah. But what's weird is like, so we were. I kind of wanted to mention this when you were talking about they're all like depressed and stuff when they come back.
Uh-huh.
I forget who it was. Maybe it was Bezos, but someone went up there and they got up there and they were like, this is just a crazy experience. You are overcome with all these emotions and you have this feeling of I'm so small and I'm one small piece in this greater picture of the ecosystem of Earth, and then you get to the top and you just like see everything and it just becomes like nothing, right? And then you go
Uh-huh.
back down and it's just I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but if you leave Earth, that's just an experience that not many people are ever going to experience. No one's, especially now, like we're not going anymore, right? So, but there's got to be something that just doesn't sit well with you when you're being launched that many miles from home, right? And then you
Uh-huh.
get to a different place and you're just like, what even is like what am I doing? Could you imagine literally standing on the moon? Like just being in your own head. Like what would you think when you're there? Like it it doesn't seem realistic at all.
You wouldn't be thinking about how you want to hit a golf ball, that's for sure.
Yeah, that is very true. I would definitely I'd try to be on a buggy or something, just drive around and everywhere.
Uh-huh.
I don't know.
Just a four-wheeler.
Yes, that'd be so fun. Like, why are we not doing that, dude? Like, why? It makes me mad because like we definitely could, but then again, it's got to do with money or something. I guarantee it. At the end of the day, but I don't know. I think we had a good talk. We didn't debate a whole lot, but there's not a whole lot to debate on. Like,
There's a certain point where you just have to trust or believe in
yeah,
one side
it's like who do you
because you're
trust?
never going to
Literally,
prove
yeah.
it.
Literally,
Like, do I trust the media or do I trust my own ability to judge?
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll send you that video about the Federal Reserve right after.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in. This was definitely a longer episode. Sorry for
And
the
check out our
long.
Spotify.
Yeah, that's right. We just got on Spotify. I'll talk to you a bit more about that. I'll post a link to Spotify. I'll try to get this video up as soon as possible. I gotta edit it down a bit, so I don't know. It may not be up today, but yeah. Thanks for the support. We don't have any followers or anything. Like we have like 10, 20 views on like these videos, but no one wants to like or follow. Like are these just Russian bots or what's going on? So
Probably.
once we get like the real microphones and all the audio interface mixers and all that bullshit, we'll look good and sound good, and then people will actually want to hear us. So
Then we'll start getting paid.
exactly, yeah, everything will be authoritative and will look super credible, and they'll just want to believe us what we say, even if it's not, just because we sound and look nice. It'll give us people will just.
We can
wanna
sell
believe
pills.
us. We. Hey man, I mean, Alex Jones is making. Dude made.
We're not funded by George Soros or the globalists. We need your support. Otherwise, we're going to go under.
These blue silver vitamins have been proven by the Homeland Security and the Pentagon. It kills all the viruses. Like, it's
This
crazy.
toothpaste actually protects against COVID-19.
Yeah, the blue silver toothpaste. Like, what the fuck? It's fucking crazy. Well, maybe one day we'll be that big. It'd be a pleasure. So,
Yeah.
all right, everyone.
All
Well,
right.
thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
Remember to enjoy your golf.